Here's the typical scenario for a college student with ADD, which is you start out well. You actually start out very strong. You don't slack off initially because you have so much adrenaline and excitement going about the newness of it. So the first few weeks you may do particularly well. Maybe you're pulling straight A's in all of your classes. Then you start to fall behind on this one little assignment, maybe a little bit more over here. Maybe you stayed out late on a Sunday night and then you didn't show up on your class on Monday. And now all of a sudden things start to pile up on you. And because we have an inability to tune in that one station at a time or figure out how to prioritize or what to do when, that's when we start getting into trouble. It's about halfway through our first semester that we've missed that one class, and then we realize, well, I don't have my work done for the next class, or maybe I'm not even sure what the work is that's due, so I better skip that class until I figure it out. And then you forget about that midterm coming up, and then there was that paper due on Monday, but that's not done yet, so I better miss that class. And we tend to go from being a solid A or B student until halfway through the semester. Everything piles up, and unfortunately, our coping mechanism is such that where most students are able to detangle the mess and at least muddle their way through, we instead hit lockdown in our minds. And we'll go from that A or B and then go to not making any of our classes and then bombing the entire semester.
Is ADD connected with depression? Or is depression a result of this downsliding?
Oh, they definitely go hand in hand. I'm not sure whether one starts the other or which direction, but there is a correlation in both directions that many students who have ADD are depressed, and also many students who have depression have ADD-like traits. So what happens, though, with a student who has depression, or an ADD student that has depression, is we have a very skewed self-image or mirror of ourselves. And this comes from growing up both being told, you can't make it, you're a screw-up, you can't get the job done, sit down, do your homework, do this, do that, and which we've continuously let people down. So in our heads, we've continuously let ourselves down. And then also we have this mind that is hypervigilant. We don't have enough chemical stimulant activity in our brains. That's why we're always, clicking on a pen, wiggling around in our chair, or pacing. It's because we're trying to stimulate or wake up our minds enough to be able to focus and concentrate. Now, with a mind that's looking continuously for stimulus, if we're not doing well, we go on the hunt internally and look for problems in our lives. We all do this to some extent, but someone with ADD has a huge tendency to look for big problems in their lives and then to find them. And what happens in college is oftentimes they get very depressed and they have no accurate way to tell, well, is this a temporary problem? Is this something I seek help for? Or do I have some sort of a chemical imbalance going on? And it often spirals very badly out of control.
Do some colleges understand that better than others?
Oh, absolutely. There are both colleges that do better than others. There are advisors that do better than others. And if you get hooked up with a school that has a good disabled students program, they can often either help catch the student or put enough of a safety net in place that when the going gets tough, somebody notices something and something gets done.
Michael Sandler is our guest, founder of the Creative Learning Institute. And if you have a question, please join us, 505-7850 or 1-800-730-2727, and you can talk to Michael for yourself. I was looking at chapter 2, I guess. Well, no, the first chapter after the introduction in your college confidence with ADD, which is a little story about Thomas Edison. Did Thomas Edison have ADD?
Oh, absolutely. He was
Absolutely.
Well, there was no test done for ADD at the time, so we can only look at the traits that he had and the characteristics that he had. But he certainly had quintessential ADD traits. He was kicked out of something like 3 schools by the age of 9 before his mom homeschooled him because teachers and a headmaster had said that he was incorrigible. He was unteachable. And he went on to something like 10,000 patents because what he had was a beautifully creative mind, but it wouldn't go from point A to point B to point C the way the teachers wanted him to.
So it got there. His brain got there, but it got there in a rather circuitous route. Is that what you're saying?
Either circuitous or one we would have a hard time even mapping. I like to say that people with ADD are so far out of the box, we can't even find the box.
So it's not like that Family Circus cartoon where, they show Billy or something going for an errand, and they show his little travels all over the neighborhood and all the places he stopped. It's even worse than that.
It's sort of like Albert Einstein, another person with quintessential ADD traits, who couldn't get through high school algebra. He couldn't do it in the steps that they wanted him to. At the same time, he was writing a paper on relativity. I mean, that's so far out there from algebra.
Now, Michael, you're not saying that there aren't degrees of disability associated with ADD, are you?
I'm saying actually that the reverse. There are degrees.
Okay, so some people are a little outside the box. People are a lot outside the box.
We can go with that, absolutely.
Now, you were talking about bicycling as being a really great way, I guess, of coping with being attention deficit in school. Is sports generally a good way to handle needing to hyper-focus at times?
Sports and being out in nature and regular aerobic activity can be fantastic in helping center the mind, get some endorphins going, which gives us greater focus and concentration, and being able to give us a natural rhythm so that we have a certain time for studying, a certain time for playing, and a certain time for our minds to unwind and allow us to sleep. We often have a huge difficulty with sleeping at night because we still have 20 radio stations blaring in our head. But if we're doing daily aerobic activities, for myself it was cycling, for someone else it may be soccer or basketball, lacrosse, for any number of sports, it allows us to naturally unwind at the end of the day or collapse and get to sleep.
So part of the way of handling this condition is to see how your brain works best and how you can unwind. And routine, is that more important among ADD folks than maybe others?
I think routine is great for everybody. I think it's essential for those with ADD because when you have those 20 radio stations going on at once, it's hard to pick out what to concentrate on and what not to. So if you have a routine, let's say you're in class, it's your last class of the day, and you don't know what's coming next. Well, instead of focusing on class, you're thinking about, where am I going to go here? Am I going to go there? What am I going to do then? What about this? What about the other thing? If you know what's coming next, it allows you to let go of that and be more in the present and focus on what you need to do now. So while we tend to rail against routine, we say, well, I just want to, have the rest of the day free to myself. That actually becomes a nightmare for us. If instead we know from 3 to 4 we're doing this, 4 to 5 we're doing that, and then maybe we have dinner, and then 6 to 7 this, it's much easier for us to get things done, for us to be less anxious, and for us to be successful.
On the other side of that coin, though, do you tend to be more disappointed when routines don't happen?
You hit the nail on the head. We tend to be like locomotives heading down a railroad track. And to make a locomotive change to a different track can be quite a challenge. And so you're right, it can be very difficult for us if we had planned on, soccer from 3 to 4 o'clock, and instead we need to do something completely different. Maybe the game's been canceled, or maybe we're stuck at school for a project or discipline, unfortunately. Who knows what? But that can be a heartbreaker for us because we're so focused and committed on that next event.
Mm-hmm. What do you do about that? What does a person who loves an ADD person do about that tendency to inevitably not follow through on a promise, maybe not get the ice cream cone on the way home from soccer practice? How do we compensate for that? How do we correct that?
I would say the best thing that you can do is infinite love and help them to build just a great internal sense of self-esteem.